Well, Razorback fans, we know the Razorback offense is going to be a lot different from last year, but the Razorback defense is still a big question mark. Is there a chance that it'll actually be better than what it was a year ago? Well, let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I'm also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football HC is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Thursday, and hopefully everybody enjoyed yesterday where it was the SEC college football preview. I got a lot of takes and a lot of funny comments from that because people were laughing at my approach and my sassiness, if you would. But I hate other teams in the SEC, so I'm not going to really sit there and try to bloviate or blow smoke up anybody's rear end. So I'm glad and hopefully you all enjoyed it. But getting back to brass tacks here, it was really interesting because yesterday had a chance to hear from Razorback defense coordinator Travis Williams, which Travis Williams, I know that I'm always about Bobby Petrino and talking a lot about him, but Travis Williams is just a really cool guy. I mean, he's got a lot of knowledge. He's got a great personality. He's a great freestyle rapper, as we found out. And I think that he just doesn't get enough credit maybe for what happened last year defensively and just the quick turnaround that Arkansas had going from being an absolute atrocious type of defense to an actual little bit of a serviceable defense. So still, though, lots of work to be done. But he was meeting with the media, and I think he was asked a pretty interesting question, which I've always been fascinated by with coaches on year over year, because nowadays it's even more complicated and even more crazy considering that you have the transfer portal, considering that high school recruiting, you have the early signing period and the later signing period, and then you have not only trying to keep guys on board, but trying to get new guys in. And it's just really chaotic when it comes from one year to the next. So Travis Williams was asked about what he's learned as far as the differences between this year's team and last year's team defensively. And an interesting comment. Take a listen.
That's a good question. I like that. All the questions was good, by the way. But you know what? It's really good to see the guys gel. Because you bring in different pieces of the puzzle together. So, like Fernando, I mean, and he's on the offensive side. I like to watch that kid. You're talking about a leader. I like to watch him lead those guys, lead the offensive lineman. Taylor, our quarterback, just watching how he leads. And, so you come over to defense. You got Anton that's bringing his leadership and his experience coming in. And you got Switzer and Cuddy. Cuddy likes the whole room up, So I really like the leadership of our team. And just those guys being so close. So you watching, you could just see, okay, these guys like each other. The group that I really like to watch is the defensive line. They got a special type of bond. They during spring break, they all go to Miami together, like all of that. I mean, it's pretty cool to see, and just seeing what Coach Pittman has built here. And you see those guys are buying into it and how close those guys are, how close the staff is. It's really fun to watch.
Okay, so there wasn't anything specifically said as far as like, oh, well, this particular player has made us better, or, I like the way that this team practices and then they get after it. It was pretty much talking about the closeness and the leadership of the group. So people are going to take that in different ways. Some people are going to look at that as being like, well, okay, how many times have we heard that? Like, seriously, how many times have we heard people come out and say, oh, well, this team's so close-knit. This team is so great. They do all this stuff together, everything like that. It seems like we probably hear it more often than not. And there's occasions where it just gets old. It really just gets old of hearing because you hear it every offseason. Like one time I'd like to have some sort of coach just come out and say, actually, we're not as close-knit as we were last year. The personalities just don't mesh as much. You're never going to hear that. So don't look at it from the perspective of just the basic coaching speak and the coach talk and all of that. This is the direction I kind of want to look at it in and focus on. when he mentions the leadership and then watching the other units, not only on his defensive side, but also on the offensive side for the Razorbacks, he talks about the leadership that it comes from. And he even mentions some players by name. He talked about Talon and the leadership that he's able to provide. What that tells me about somebody like Travis Williams is he's an infectious type of coach where he observes others. He sees other things and looks at it in the lens of, not in a way of like being distracting, but in a way of saying, how they do it is successful. How they do it, it's working. I want to integrate that into me too. I want to be a part of that. I want to have that. I want to bring that together. And it may sound really cliche to you, but to me, it sounds exactly like what great coaches are and what great coaches can become. Because so many times I think coaches, which it works for some, but so many times coaches just almost blindly, they're like, I don't care what anybody else does. I'm not looking at anybody else. I'm not watching anybody else. I'm focused on me and mine and my little group and my little players over here, and I don't give a rip about anything else. Okay? Sometimes that works out. Sometimes that's okay because you do want that to be your main focus. You don't want to be distracted. But it depends on the intention that you have when you're watching these other groups. Like if you're somebody like Travis Williams, do you think by him watching the leadership qualities and watching the way that the group on the offensive line or with the quarterback room or whatever across the field? Because here's the thing. What Talon Green's going to do is not going to have anything to do with the day-to-day job of what Travis Williams is doing. But I also don't think him watching how he addresses and how he conducts himself and how he goes about it is some sort of negative thing that is going to be like, well, he's not focusing on the right things. I think he is. Because I feel like that's what, like, put it into perspective of have it be relationships or friendships or groups or whatnot. There are people that just have their little group of friends and they don't care about meeting anybody else. And that's fine. That's fine. Everyone's different. But the people that can always work a room and are always just, be never in an awkward situation socially, if I can say that right. But going around the room and just never having this awkwardness, being able to talk to anybody, being able to fit in with anybody. Some people might say those people are full of crap, but to me, a lot of cases, someone who's able to do that, they do it based on observation. They do it about, okay, I'm going to take it slow and see what's going on. Okay, now find ways to make this conversation work. Find a common ground. Find a sense of humor point. Something that just makes it to where it's like, okay, now this can work. And from there, it builds. It could build into a friendship. It could build into a relationship, depending on who it is. It can build into something that's really strong, really great, and something that's very successful. And that's exactly the same way that I see this thing with Travis Williams and how he's observing the leadership of other people. It's not that he's looking at it in some sort of negative way or jealous way. What he's looking at is like, okay, I see how that works for them. And he's going to do the same thing when he has his defensive players. And he's going to go and see, all right, how can I make this group so close-knit? Yes, X's and O's are important. Yes, Jimmy's and Joe's are important. But if you don't have a collective group, especially since he's the defensive coordinator, if you don't have a collective group of individuals that are all on the same page, that are all going the right direction, that are all doing the things that they need to do to be successful, it doesn't, like, you're not going to be respected as a coach. You're not going to be respected as a defensive coordinator. You're not going to be respected in any regard. You have to be able to keep a group close-knit and to figure them out. Because, again, going back to the whole issue at hand, players come and go, but you want to be able to have that type of culture inside the defense where you're able to bring people together and keep them together and have them be successful. I brought it up many times about how it was a little alarming when last year you had literally all your linebackers leave. All of them. And there was only one of them that couldn't play college football anymore. The rest of them are playing college football, but they're just playing somewhere else. And I remember thinking how bad that was. That was not a good look. That was bad. And you know what? Maybe it ends up still being a bad thing. Maybe there is some issue there. But just continuing to hear from Travis Williams and continue to hear his take, it could have been something very easily that was just about, hey, These guys aren't the close-knit group. These guys, there's not that leadership quality in there. There's not that thing that I'm looking for. Now, again, I'm not making excuses. I'm not coming out here and saying that the linebackers are going to be so much better this year with a lot of mysteries and a lot of unknowns, because especially since now everybody's talking about in the coaching staff how greatly deep this defensive front is, but especially at the linebacker position. That's the thing, is we just have to wait and see. We can hear and talk about it all day long, but it comes down to this, because about Razorback defense is going to be better this year than it was last year. On paper, looking at the depth chart and the starters and everything, am I going to say yes, whoop, whoop, based on that, it'll be better? No. You're missing a lot of pieces from last season that were really good, and you have a lot of uncertainties this year. And so when you have uncertainty, you're always going to revert back to probably not going to be as good. However, if all the things that Travis Williams has discussed and talked about, and how the linebacker core is extremely deep and might be one of the deepest positions on the field and on the defense, that the secondary has improved and continues to improve under the great coaching of Marcus Woodson, that the defensive line, like he was talking about all them going to Miami together, that they're truly that close-knit and they truly have great leaders like a Landon Jackson, like an Anton Junkosh. If all those things are going to actually be true and consistent, then I think that there is a chance overall, generally speaking, that the defense could be better. They got to stay healthy. They got to keep the depth there. But they are at least, by Travis Williams' regards, he sees a difference. He sees a potential. He sees an improvement. And based on that, I could see a better defense. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm just ready for the season to start. That's really where I'm at now. And hey, we'll talk more about something else I thought was really fascinating from Travis Williams here in just a second. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, it's summertime. Well, almost into the summertime anyways. It still feels like that depending on where you're at. The weather's really nice here, and I don't want to jinx it, but it's always barbecue season. You know, Labor Day is coming up, which we know is definitely a barbecue season. So you got to stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both for the whole group. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner that you've been craving. Other apps that give you points that don't amount to much, well, with Ibotta, you can earn cash back and you can withdraw from your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. It's time you joined the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using promo code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So kind of going along with what Travis Williams had to say, this was something that really popped off. I put up this video, this clip on my Twitter, X, whatever, and it exploded. I even had Colin Cowherd retweeting it, which, side note, Colin Cowherd was my inspiration, one of my biggest inspirations for getting in sports talk radio, so that was pretty cool. But either way, it was really popping off because he was talking about signal stealing or sign stealing, however you want to put it, in college football, which we know the Connor Stallions thing up at Michigan was a huge deal, having a documentary made about it, ended up punishing Jim Harbaugh for it. Kind of a crazy, crazy, crazy thing. Well, we know that with microphones being in the helmets now, they're trying to eradicate a lot of that stuff going on. Well, Travis Williams really went into some in-depth and interesting storytelling about sign stealing and how prevalent and common it actually is in college football. Take a listen.
Oh, a lot. Like, it's so funny. You'll be shocked. During the week, I know offense all around the country. They're going to get the TV copy, and they looking at the signals. Yeah, just one person. That's your only job. Look at the signals. And then boom, oh, we can't get the defensive signals. Okay, well, let's see what the defensive players are signaling. Then they'll try to get it that way. So they got different ways. I remember we played Louisville, and he was really good. And I saw the TV copy, and I could just see the whole time he's just like this, just watching. And in halftime, they got the signals. So we played him the next year. I was at UCF. We played him that next year, and I got his contact, and I called him like, "Hey man, I need to." And he sent me the whole thing. And he said, "This is what we had," and it was like 80% correct. So we had to change our signals because they just pass it around. So they're just sending it to the next. So we played SMU and Red Lashley to them, and they had the same signals. I wasn't mad that he sent it around. I would have been mad if we didn't change it. So it's huge, like just signals, and it's perfectly legal. I know teams right now that have two guys on the field because you usually have them in the box. So all the times you see a lot of these teams behind the actual team, they pull out these big curtains behind it. If it wasn't important, they wouldn't be doing it. 80% of the teams in America, when they signal, they pull out the big curtain behind so the guys in the press box can't get them. Well, they done smarten up. They done put them on the field. So they got two guys, and they just sit here and try to get it. So you got to have ways of hiding your signals, So you can always know, like, when a play happens, you go, hey, man, they got our signals. Because it's just like the perfect play. You just know. All over college football. So that's not, man, it's nothing new. It's not one of those deals where it's like unethical or something like that. Like, they do it. If you're crazy enough to keep the same signals, that's on you.
So really in-depth and really fascinating from Travis Williams. I mean, that's the type of stuff where, like, let's be honest, when the Connor Stallions thing happened, I kind of took much like so many other people, kind of took some fun in it because it was Michigan, like just kind of throwing it at him like, oh. And I'll admit, like, I felt like it was a big enough deal in the regards of just, addressing it as, hey, if you get caught, if you're doing this, then, you got to face the consequences. I know it goes on. I think everybody knows it goes on. No one's stupid enough to think it doesn't go on. Like what Coach Williams talked about, when people are holding up the curtain behind the coaches and everything, they're not doing that for no reason. They know that people watch. And how I've always looked at it is, hey, in that field, in that stadium, and that everything, you got to do a better job of hiding. And by approaching it with the microphones in the helmet, I think you go a long way to start getting to that point. But to hear that, it's really crazy. And I'm someone, again, who I don't feel like it's as big of a deal that people say it's like, oh, man, it's breaking the integrity and all that. I'm kind of siding with Coach Williams where it's like, hey, you just got to be smart enough to change it. In baseball, when they have signals and stuff. Now, you don't want to do what the Astros are doing or whatever with the electronics and technology and stuff. But if it's like, hey, you're tipping your pitches or whatever, take advantage of it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the same thing in football. So, to get a coach to go really in depth like that is pretty cool. And I love that Travis Williams really was very honest about it. Again, one of the reasons I really like hearing from him. He's very honest about a lot of things. And stealing signals in college football seems to be a pretty common one. But hey, folks, we're 7 days away from college football. Or Razorback football, I should say. So we'll talk about that here on the other side of the break, but stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, all you Locked On Razorbacks and all you Locked On Razorback fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up about a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. It's the Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Razorbacks? Some of you probably have dreamed about it. Well, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. But will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. The Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for all you Locked On Razorbacks fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a very strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. It's Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So, again, we didn't do a Locked On Razorbacks yesterday because of the preview, but did miss number 8. It's Tyler Wilson days. You know, I think everybody's pretty understanding of that. But number 7 is a pretty interesting number. Not only is it considered to be a very strong number, religiously speaking, in biblical sense, Harry Potter. You know, I know you all know that. It's like the number 7 is commonly used 7 days a week and everything. But I feel like in Razorback football, it's not a number that has really been used that often. And there are really only 2 players, kind of similar to what I thought about with, I guess, the number 10. There's only 2 players that I think of number 7. I think of Barry Lunny Jr. back in the mid-90s. And I think of Nile Davis. Those are the only ones. Now, again, I'm not saying that those are the only players, because I also remember Doo-Wop Mitchell being number 7 and rocking that Florida kick returner and one of the biggest hits you'll ever see, but that was about it. But, you know, I was somewhat understanding of Barry Lunny. I mean, he was able to lead Arkansas in that 95 season to play in their very first SEC championship game. And he also, was part of one of the more controversial plays that Arkansas actually ended up on the positive side of, with the J.J. Metters catch against Alabama in 95. However, Nile Davis is the one I'm going to remember because that's the guy that watched him in college and everything. And I'll say this, like, Arkansas has had a very, very great run of great running backs. They've been very fortunate enough to where, especially in this millennium, they've had a lot of really good running backs, and in some cases, elite level running backs. Like Darren McFadden, greatest, GOAT, best Razorback football player of all time, not even close. So, I mean, you had him and Felix Jones, Peyton Hillis. We talked about him, and Alex Collins, rest in peace. Still one of the great Razorback running backs out there. But when it came to talent-wise, Nile Davis was one of those running backs where that year in 2010, he was absolutely incredible. Because in the first 4 games of the year, he really didn't play all that much. He played here and there, but didn't really find his stride. And he rushed for over 1,400 yards that year. And people may forget, he did the majority of that in the final 8 games. Like, that dude was cooking. He had speed. He had power. He was able to run away from everybody. And I remember when he was coming out of high school, he was actually a 4-star player, 4-star running back, but he had hurt himself. I believe he broke his leg, something like that, in his high school senior year. So he, kind of didn't really get maybe as much love from other places that he thought he should because of that fact. Well, he went to Arkansas, and what was unfortunate for him is, he was a little banged up here and there, but when 2010 happened, he really came into his own. And I remember 2011, people were poising Arkansas to just have another great year, which they ended up doing. But Nile Davis got hurt and was out for the season. Just really sucked. Dennis Johnson picked up the load where he could, but to miss out on a guy like Nile Davis was really unfortunate. And then, of course, in 2012, everything went bad then. But Nile Davis played in the NFL, played for the Chiefs, played for the Steelers, had a really good run there. And I don't know, I just feel like he's a guy that gets forgotten a little bit, where, yes, he dealt with injury, and there's nothing you can do about that. But, man, when that guy was healthy, he was one of my favorite running backs to watch at Arkansas. Because he just had the entire package. Strength, he had speed. I believe he ran like a 4.37 maybe, or 4.4 at the combine. He was like 5'10", but just a load. He's really hard to bring down. So definitely one of the more underrated running backs that Arkansas has had this century for sure. Appreciate everybody listening in and watching in to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.